I think we're ready to go. Good morning, everyone. Thanks again for joining me for another morning live stream. Um, this morning, we're literally just going to be continuing on where we left off last weekend. So, last weekend, we of course began with, um, the sketch that I'd done for this cover, which looks something like this. And we began some work on Lyrica. So now let's just build into that and work a bit more. I'm not going to touch the other character that's behind her yet until she's completely, well, or more or less completely done. So just move a bit closer to my tablet, and then we'll go from there. Just looking at this, I'm actually quite happy with where I left it. I'm worried about the scale. She looks a bit small, but bearing in mind that this will, of course, have a title that goes over here or here, and my name has to go somewhere as well. And chapter 8 needs to go somewhere as well. It probably is fine. I'll probably have to get away with it. There, of course, will be smoke effects and things like that, but yeah, first impressions is that she looks quite small. But there's a lot of empty space at the moment, which won't be there when the piece is done. So, right now, I think I'm just going to jump in with filling out this sort of area and work my way down each leg, and then I'll go in for the jacket and the arms. And then I'll come back and revisit the face and head later on. So let's switch to my trusty hard round pressure opacity brush. I try and keep it simple these days. I don't use as many fancy brushes as I used to because I just feel like it can sometimes overcomplicate stuff and leave a lot of artifacts and what that I don't necessarily need or want. I tend to find textured brushes tends to work with really obvious areas of texture, like if you have specific materials and stuff, or for landscapes I use a lot of texture brushes in landscapes, plus with roughness and things like that. But otherwise, generally speaking, I don't touch them much these days. Mm. Right. Major areas of highlights and things like that. I come to at the end. So of course, what she's wearing is intended to be quite shiny, but I don't want to put in that shiny yet. That'll come later. Of course, while doing that, I'll also use reference for materials and how they behave. I love bringing a little bit of color into shadows. So you see here that this sort of red, it's always unfortunate when you see a flat black. In my opinion, anyway. I know that, of course, flat backs and blacks and lots of black is pretty typical of comics, but I've never liked using them, and you'll notice that I don't use them in my comics. I don't have flat black shadows like that. Black to me is just for oops, drop my pen. Black for me is just for outlining. Um, I think I probably will end up, you know, doing a bit of work with experimenting with using black the way that Western and even manga, to be honest, artists use it. Maybe in my next picture comics, like Dust 22, but generally speaking, I try to stay away from it. I just find harsh black shadows really kind of something about them just I don't like. I don't know whether that's because maybe I like the look of cartoons, and when I first started drawing, a lot of my stuff was influenced quite heavily by cartoons and anime, which don't use black like that. And so when I started drawing it, I got the same sort of effect, but who knows, you can say. I've just never really taken to using black like that. That will do for now. There's always a weird thing with comics and illustration. How much do you want clothes to act like clothes? Especially when you're trying to show off the athleticism and so on of a character, and also just for ease of drawing. Superhero comics are, of course, famous for making things super duper skin tight, like the clothes are just painted on. But to what degree do you do that? That's always the question, isn't it? There should be another band down here. It's a drawing's initial concept. Holding the blades. One thing that I found quite annoying just as a comic artist and artist is weapon holsters. Very frustrating. Very annoying. Not as that aesthetically pleasing in most cases. Um, it's why I opt for like expandable weapons and stuff like that, but some weapons just aren't. It just doesn't make sense lore wise. I mean, Commander Black, of course, has an expandable spear, so he doesn't hold the full spear all the time, and that's because it's literally from this planet. But for the rest, there is no expandable technology yet in the in this planet in Gaia where Arksong takes place. So they literally have to hold their weapons all the time. It's annoying. I think that messes with designs a lot. But at that same time, maybe that's an oversight on my part. Maybe I should have factored them into design more purposefully in the original case, which is what I've tried to do with this. And it's why this one has clear like belts for her weapon on it compared to her first design. Her first design did not have clear sheaths or belts where her daggers could be sort of placed into. But yeah, that's to be fair, that's a vein on my part because that's like a basic character design thing. It's got to be have some form of function, especially in this case. Yeah, it can look cool, but there has to be some level of function. Weapons have to be stored somewhere. She's a pirate. Um, the original design for, or the original idea, which turned into Arksong, of course, had the main character who was a, basically a male lyrica called Lyric, funnily enough, um, had somewhere to actually store equipment like on them. It was like a utility belt type thing, and that weapon was built into the. It was built into the story. The story was very, not very different, but quite different, and the weapons were the source of the power that Artsum triggered the weapon. Um, but yeah, with that one, it was a lot easier because, like I said, it was built into the fabric of the story. It was built into the fabric of the design. With this, I did not. When I took that out and updated it to the story that we've got today, I didn't factor it into the design, which was fairly careless of me. But we live and we learn. No one's ever really complained about it, to be fair. No one's ever really asked, where does she keep her weapon a lot of time? Possibly because it is the only character that is sometimes missing her weapon. Fang pretty much always has his on him, and when he doesn't have it, he explains why he doesn't have it. Like for example, on chapter 3, I think he says he doesn't need it at one point, so it's just left on the ship. Chapter 3 and 4, I think that's the case. Yeah. Um, And chapter 3, not 3, sorry, 5 has a whole section on his weapon and its background, to be fair. So, I've become a lot more cognizant of it. I mean, it always was a fairly important story thing, story element, like his weapon and the past is linked to it. But I was very aware of him having the weapon on him and how noticeable he is with it. That's the easy one. You stick it on his back. Annoying to draw, especially at certain angles. But I think we fairly accept that you can have magnetic stuff built into your clothes now in fantasy and sci-fi, and people will accept that it can just stay there, it can just float on your back, and if the person's strong enough, they can carry it. What I'm trying to level up though, in terms of my character design, is how armor sort of interacts on the person. Um, Fang's original armor was I don't know, it was fine, but I found it quite bulky. Um, the new armor that he'll have it will be in this chapter. In this chapter, although I haven't drawn any pages with it yet. I've drafted some, but I haven't drawn the final version. It's a lot more. Is that working? I think so. It's a lot more streamlined, but at the same time, I need to make sure that it can be put on, or looks like it can be put on and taken off. I mean, one mistake which I made with the last one was that it didn't. It sort of looked like it was stuck onto the shirt that he wore underneath. Not shirt, but he wore like a black underlayer, and it was attached to that. So sometimes he had just the underlayer on, other times he didn't, and I mean other times and he had a black underlay on, and sometimes the black underlay would have the armor attached, and sometimes it didn't, because he of course didn't need it when he was just chilling out on the ship or going into an area which didn't have any danger, which isn't many areas, so he's wearing it most of the time. But yeah, I didn't want this one to look like that. I wanted this one to look a lot more sort of full on armor, especially with what's going to happen in the next few chapters. I want them to look, really battle ready. But at the same time, I don't want it to look too. This brush isn't working. This blending brush isn't working. I didn't want it to look too. Again. But I think that's always been a thing with my drawings and my designs. I tend to make a lot of outfits look very organic, very much like they're grown rather than sort of built and put on. And I know partially why that's the case. And I would say that it is largely because back when, I don't know if you've heard of the game Guild Wars, but when the second one was announced, Guild Wars 2, they did a bunch of blog posts and sort of featurettes about how they were designing specific characters and races and stuff like that. And one of them was about the Silvari, these plant-like people. And one of the things that I loved about them was they said their armor, their clothes, all that was grown. They had like a specific point on them, which was like hair around their waist, where everything grew out of, and it sort of spiraled out from there. And I quite like that idea of armor and clothing being grown onto a person. I'm very big on You know, that part of sci-fi where rather than being clunky and bulky, the stuff is very organic. Um, and even before Guild Wars 2 came out, I was already sort of leaning towards that with my original ideas for Chronicles of the Nova Haven. I was very big on more organic machines and more organic cyborgs and stuff like that. So rather than being big chunks of metal sticking out and sort of body horror angle, I wanted a more sort of animal, you know. Sorry, I'm just computing here a bit. Sort of like it. Yeah, a sort of well, biologically and animal and organic and less destructive view of transhumanism. You know, going beyond what we currently are, and that sort of science fiction. The body horror science fiction, as cool as it is, I think is a bit too bleak for my liking, and bleak stories are not what I do. They're not what I like to do. Although there are bleak moments in my stories, and make no mistake, there is an element of body horror in the initial stories of IA, where Chronicles of the Nova Haven takes place, but you don't see it in Chronicles of the Nova Haven as much. There always will be with stuff where humans are being changed into something else, but I try to tone it down. In the original story, which takes place in the world which sets it up, which might eventually get turned into something. I've been playing around with loads of different versions of it, but in the original version, of course, we get it involves the story of, if you've read Estes piece, you'll know that there's mention of the Immortals, who can sort of rival Arknights like Aster, or Ephrair, or Feng Hang and people like that. And yeah, those Immortals are pretty body horror-ish. They've literally got like pipes and stuff coming out of them, because they're quite aggressively force built Arknights basically. But yeah, it's the story was quite dark. The story that I made for them and how they came about and stuff like that. So I put it on the back burner because let's face it, even though of course most of or a lot of my readers are adults, and most of the time I am selling to adults, and a lot of time I'm sharing stuff with adults. I do want children to be able to access it and not be too creeped out. Most of the positive responses to Arksong have been from children. Adults love it, and I've got positive responses from them, but I know children especially love it, and if possible, I'd like them to enjoy as much of the Arc Regenesis saga as possible without, having nightmares. I actually quite like this to save. Um, I am not avoiding doing feet because I cannot do feet. I can do feet. I don't like doing feet, but I can do feet. The reason why I'm not putting it in is because this part's going to be all covered by smoke and clouds and writing anyway, so why even waste my time? This way I get to center lyrical more, not have her be too high or shrink her down to fit in her full body, and yeah, Save myself time if I don't have deer feet. Like deer feet. Don't like deer feet. Don't necessarily always do them well, but I can do feet. Got orange in here. What's the time? 9:20. We'll keep going for another half hour or so, I think. The lazy part of me says just to reflect the leg. This part of the design is symmetrical. In fact, this design is very symmetrical. Why have I got such a symmetrical design? To be fair, Lyrica's designs have always been pretty symmetrical. Her face isn't that symmetrical in terms of her piercings, and yeah, generally speaking, she's quite symmetrical. Which I'm often quite against in character designs, but I don't know, for her it seems to work. I think there's power in symmetry. And there's this very interesting thing where Lyrica is symmetrical, but the antagonist, Rhyme, Commander Black, he's half half, and Ruki are very asymmetrical. So, I mean, there is intention there, and you'll see a bit of it in chapter 7 itself that Rhyme's because of her position and how she's viewed, she sort of sets trends, and so the asymmetricality among the Empire sort of comes from her. But yeah, usually it tends to be that the heroes are asymmetrical. They're the odd ones, and the villains or the big organization which the heroes are going up against, tend to be asymmetrical. But I flipped it on its head. I assume I did it very intentionally in the first place, but I've forgotten the exact reason for that. This belt band looks massive. Should it be that massive? Should it be that big? Should something be on it? I don't know. Maybe here's a chance to get in that asymmetricality. Should we just put a massive buckle there? She is a pirate. And then what sort of buckle? I've usually just said this as a band, but now I'm just like, I don't know. Maybe it does need to be something more. Alright, let me have a quick scan through previous iteration of this design. I'm still here. Just give me a second. One. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm just checking back through some of my old designs, just to see what we got. No, there was nothing on the belt. A bit further back for another design. Oh, just saw a glimpse of Rhyme's new design. So happy with it. I'm very fond of Ruki's new design as well. Put quite a lot of work into that one. There's a few versions. Ruki's outfit probably changes the most, which I think makes sense. I mean, her and Kelpie are the youngest, and they're still very much trying to figure out who they are. it makes sense, in my opinion, for them to, constantly be changing, um, trying to reflect the people around them. The older, yes, yeah, we can say just as clueless, um, people in power around them. So if you do, if you have read Arksong, you'll probably have noticed that Ruki and Kelpie have interesting relationships with their respective leaders, or yeah, their respective leaders. So whether it be Kelpie and Lyrica, or Ruki and Ryan, it's important. It's significant to the sort of themes of the story, and I've tried to avoid talking on the themes of the story a lot because I do want it to be a fact that as the story goes along, you're just like, oh, this is what it's about. Because although the stakes are, of course, high, I do genuinely, genuinely think that when it boils down to it, the feud is much more smaller and controlled than we think. It's just that the ramifications of the feud have a much wider spread effect. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. This is rough, but I'm still not sure I like it. Also, it's going to be annoying to draw in every single panel. Alright, let me just get a quick Google search. Oh, okay. I like that. I think that'll work alright. I'm gonna be lazy just for now. I'm gonna copy this section just to save me time. The problem with symmetry is that you can tell when the person's messed with symmetry. It's very, very obvious. So whenever I do symmetry, I'll try to do it as early as possible, and then I backtrack and redo it. I mean, I backtrack and work into it, because yeah, symmetry is obvious, super obvious. Symmetry is not necessarily a friend when it comes to drawing people, because they're very asymmetrical. So we automatically spot there's something uncanny when people are drawn too symmetrically. One random thing I always have to decide as well when creating designs is whether to put in the zip thing here. It's like, do I not? I don't know. I don't know. I put it in on most, but I don't know. It does help break up the shapes and forms at the same time. It's like, yeah. It's another, not only is it another thing to draw that I can easily forget, but it's just things also because sometimes when you put details in areas, it can bring attention to the area. So it's just like why put it there. But yeah, it does help break up the shapes. Sometimes when you have massive gaps of space, it in CAD designs, it makes things look really weird and blank. Hmm. The shame that whenever I have to do these lives, it is in early in the morning. I mean, it is the main time when I draw, so not really much I can do about that. But also, oh, well, unfortunately, I should say, it's when people are sleeping, especially if it's a weekend. What can you do? All right, I am actually quite happy with the way this is looking. The jacket looks very feeble at the moment. I'm gonna really have to puff this out like that, which is actually quite exciting. I'm gonna duplicate the. Oh, do I duplicate the layer or do I just work straight in? I'll duplicate the layer, and this is just for safety. If I accidentally go over the parts that I've done and I'm quite happy with, of course none of this is done. There's loads of work to be done there still. But if I accidentally go over, say here, when I'm doing the background bit, I can just always take a bit from the one that I've copied and paste it back over the top, and that way it's fully done. So that's why I'm going to make a copy at the moment. A lot of time copies are backups for me, um, or duplicated layers are backups for me. So a lot of my PSDs, you'll go back and you'll find a really early version of a lot of the work where just oops, stop gesturing, where I've just like sort of said, hey, I might make a mistake and not be able to draw it back in correctly. So let me just put it here, and it does come in use. It does come in handy. Sometimes I do find that I'm going back and copying and pasting the eye, which I accidentally went over when I put in a specific mark or something like that. So see, I've already gone over some of this. Bit more red. I'm happy I went with the red. Coming back to this, I was like, oh, the red was a good idea. I don't know if you remember, if you watched the previous stream. Um, but yeah, I'd originally planned to make the jacket black, but she would have been wearing so much black, and it's just not her colors. It's important that her colors are the red, the gold, and the black together, with a little bit of white sprinkled in. And the colors become important. Watch out for the colors, is all I'll say. Watch out for the colors, watch out for the outfits. They're all important. It's funny. The question I'm asking myself at the moment is, does she wear this jacket into battle? Will I have to be redrawing this 100 times while she's swinging all over the place? I don't know. I hope not. But who knows? Gotta do what you gotta do. If it makes sense to me, then I will. But yeah, just something. At the moment, the jacket is looking like this. So much shorter coat than her usual one, her usual captain one. Which, if you have read, you'll know that she left somewhere and no longer has. She does have other backup coats, but that one is her favourite. So this is the idea for this coat. It should look something like this. Hmm. Do the black. Do the red work? Nah, I think I prefer black. Yeah, like that. Sure. Just a few suggestions. Yeah, that makes sense. Silhouette on this is going to be so good. Everyone likes a good silhouette. They don't know it, but they do. So play off. General shape is there. Let's go for just under 10 minutes more. 10 minutes more should do it. Purple. Let's do a little bit here actually. Hands are possibly too small. This one is too short for sure. Um, I'll probably do a lazy and replicate it after I finish this one, just for ease, and then change it up afterwards. There were supposed to be blades in this. Still not sure whether I'll do them. Let's just have a look at the original. They work here. They do work here. We get really nice dual triangle composition thing going on. So and because of those, which works. But we'll see. We'll see. With these designs, we're always, of course, trying to get across character traits. So we do want to get across a level of rebelliousness, but also, of course, power, control, someone that demands respect. Oh, just come out of time. Just finish up this area here. And it's a different sort of respect to rhyme at its core. No, not at its core. At its surface appearance, but at its core, it's a similar type. Alright, I think we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. We'll continue this on another week. Maybe even in the afternoon, since half term's coming up. But yeah, that is all for now. Take care.